morning. Today we're going to be using this session to look at multi-company and multi-currency. So over the next kind of 20 minutes, I'm going to show you how Synergist, excuse me, helps groups simplify complexity that naturally comes when you grow. For those who don't know me, haven't met before, I'm Steve. I'm a director here at Synergist, and I've spent more than 25 years working with agencies of all sizes, from small independent businesses right the way through to large international agency groups, hopefully helping them improve visibility, streamline operations, and gain better control over their businesses. So let's start by looking at a challenge that a lot of growing agencies that we speak to eventually face. So whether you're already operating multiple agencies or managing international offices, or you're planning growth, perhaps through acquisition, most agency groups eventually face the same challenge. So each business needs the freedom to operate independently with its own clients, possibly teams, workflows, commercial objectives. But at the same time, the leadership team needs a clear view of what's happening across the entire group. So they need to understand things like performance, profitability, utilization, basically the financial health, without waiting for spreadsheets to be consolidated at month end. Also, many organizations end up making a compromise. So they either centralize everything and lose flexibility for the individual businesses, or they allow every company to operate independently and then they lose visibility across the group. So the result is often disconnected systems, duplicated effort, manual reporting, and much slower decision-making process. So today's session is about showing you how you don't have to choose between autonomy and visibility. So over the next few minutes, I'll demonstrate how Synergist allows every company to operate independently whilst giving your finance leadership team a real-time consolidated view across the entire group. Now, specifically, we're going to be looking at these 5 key capabilities. So how multiple companies operate, so maintaining own clients, workflows, financials, how resources can be managed across the group, so whether you're keeping teams separate, sharing specialist resources, or centralized delivery model, how we handle multi-currency in relation to things like estimates, quotes, invoices, how then you report on that through dashboards and our data analytics tools, and then finally how Synergist provides a platform that's built so to support things like if you're doing acquisitions, if you're getting new offices, or you're thinking about international expansion. Now, before we jump into the system, I'd just like to pause on this quote from one of our clients. So it's one thing for us to talk about the benefits of Synergist, but it's far more meaningful to hear how our clients describe its impact and what it's had on their business. And I think this testimonial perfectly kind of sets the scene for today's session. So as businesses grow, so does complexity. You've got more companies, more currencies, more people, and therefore more data, and it all creates additional challenges. But Synergist is designed to bring all those things together in a single platform, allowing each business to operate independently whilst giving all the leadership team complete visibility across the group. Now, for those of you who may be less familiar with Synergist, we are the UK's leading agency management platform, and we're trusted by more than 500 agencies nationwide. So whether you're a creative agency, digital marketing agency, PR consultancy, or any other professional service business, Synergist is highly configurable and it can be tailored the way that your operation requires. But most agencies reach a point where they're maintaining the business across a collection of disconnected systems, and this might look familiar to you. So perhaps you've got some spreadsheets for budgeting, you've got CRM sales, maybe another tool for project management, maybe something different for resource planning, separate accounting software. Now, each system contains a part of the story, but nobody has the complete picture. So that's where Synergist brings those processes together into a single platform, creating one source of truth for your projects, people, and financials. And as your business grows into multiple companies and begins working across multiple currencies, having everything in one place becomes even more valuable. And that's exactly what I'd like to show you today. So without further ado, I'm just going to switch screens, turn off my camera, so bear with me a second while I do that. Okay, so I just need to... No. Okay, so hopefully, just checking you can see My screen. Okay, that's good. Right. Okay. So for me, everything starts with a multi-company with the company setup. So each company in Synergist can have its own configuration, which allows it then to, as I mentioned before, operate independently whilst all sitting within the same platform. So here we can see we've got multiple companies. So we've got a UK company and a US company. So that means each individual company can have its own settings. So that could be finance integration, workflows, I know job numbers, branding, all the operational processes relating to the company and how that works today. But also, if your two agencies work in a similar way, then it is also possible to mirror that configuration across all companies. Equally, though, each business can have its own way of working, and Synergy supports that too. So the platform provides the flexibility to standardize where it makes sense whilst allowing autonomy where it's needed. But once your companies have been configured, then it's really straightforward and users simply select which company they're working in from this kind of company selector down here. So for most people, this will default to the company that they work in every day, and permissions can be used then to restrict access so that your users only see the companies that they're authorized to work in. But for senior managers, shared services, moving between the companies is seamless and that allows you to support multiple businesses without the need for separate logins or different systems. Also, it's worth noting that both companies, both agencies can share clients and suppliers where appropriate. So again, that provides a single view across the group, or you can maintain completely separate databases if that's a better fit. And of course, and we'll cover this later, each company can operate in its own base currency, making it equally suitable for agencies expanding internationally, or if you're managing multiple legal entities across different regions. Now, another common challenge for agency groups is making the best use of people across the business. So perhaps you've won a project through your US agency, but you want it delivered by your creative team in the UK. Or maybe your specialist studio supports multiple agencies across the group. So this is exactly the type of scenario Synergist is designed to support. So let's start with the resource planner. Now, you'll see the screen is split into two, top half and bottom half. So in the lower half of the screen, this is our live pipeline of either estimated opportunities, so jobs that are in the pipeline, or confirmed jobs that are waiting to be scheduled. And what's really powerful here is this list here can be filtered to show work from a single business, a single company, or across multiple companies. So that means that your resource managers aren't restricted to scheduling work from just one business. They can see demand across the entire group and allocate work to the most appropriate team, regardless of where the opportunity originated. Now, as your agency grows, this becomes incredibly valuable for balancing workloads, making better use of specialist skills, and improving utilization across the business. Now, if your operating model also includes intercompany charging, then Synergist also captures exactly where the work has been delivered. So, if your UK team delivers work on behalf of the US company, you can then report on the value of that time and support cross-charging between companies where required. Now, of course, it's one thing to look at all the planned resources and understand the impact on your capacity. So to do that, I can look at it in a couple of different ways. I can either switch this from a booking view to a loading view, in which case there I can now see from my design creative team where we've got capacity, where somebody's fully booked, and where we've got more time booked or overbooked. Or I can switch to our capacity dashboard. So let's look at this, take away the weekend. So here we can see initially that we're looking at the UK company giving an instant view of workload and available capacity. But with a couple of clicks, if I go to my preferences, I can include the US company. And by doing that, you can see the immediate impact and how this changes the picture. So it's not just looking at US, it's looking at both companies and looking at capacity for both. So instead of managing capacity in isolation, we can understand resourcing across the wider group and hopefully make better informed decisions about where work can be delivered. Okay. Finally, on the calendar theme, all of those planned bookings that we saw before in the resource planning can flow directly into what we call My Calendar. So for most agencies, this is one of the biggest day-to-day productivity improvements. So rather than asking people to remember what they worked on at the end of the week, all their planned bookings already appear in their calendar. And with a couple of clicks, then those bookings can be converted directly into timesheets. So that means less admin for employees, faster timesheet completion, improved accuracy, and much better compliance. And because your time recording is more accurate, every report from utilization, profitability, through to supporting cross-company charging becomes significantly more reliable. Okay, so we've seen how Synergist allows multiple companies to operate independently while still sharing a single platform. The next question is usually what happens when those companies or even individual projects are working in different currencies. So whether you're operating multiple legal entities across different countries or simply having overseas clients within a single company, Synergist handles multi-currency throughout the entire project lifecycle. So as agency groups expand internationally, financial complexity, as we know, increases rapidly. Your clients want local billing. The suppliers want paying in local currencies. Finance teams spend hours manually converting data. So for me, it all starts at the project level. So every job can be created in whichever currency is appropriate, regardless of whether you're working within a single company or across a multi-company environment. Now I'm going to start with the estimate. And just a reminder for those who don't know, the estimate is completely internal. So it's where we're forecasting what we believe the project will actually take to deliver in terms of maybe time, hours, cost, and therefore what our potential profitability might be. Now, at the top of the screen, you may notice here that we've got this little toggle that allows me to switch between viewing the values in the project's trading currency, in this case euros, or our company base currency, which might be pound sterling. So it gives your operational teams the flexibility to work in the client's currency while still allowing the business to understand the financial impact it has in its own reporting currency. Now, from there, we can move to the quote, which is what the client actually receives. So straight away, you have the ability to decide how you want to present this to the client. So do you want to copy the estimate and show them all the hours? Do you want to do a more value-based proposition? But separating these two gives you far greater commercial flexibility. So perhaps you've agreed a fixed fee that's higher than the internal estimate, or maybe you've added contingency to the quote fee to protect yourself against things like exchange rate fluctuations or maybe unforeseen costs. But once that quote has been approved, so we've got quote approval turned on, this is a draft quote, then exactly the same currency will flow through to your billing schedule. So whether you're invoicing everything up front, billing in stages, or invoicing on completion, your billing plan remains in your client's currency. So when the time comes to raise the invoice, we can do that directly from the billing plan. We can raise it from the invoicing section. It's produced in the same currency. Now, we also know that some agencies also invoice before the work has taken place. And in these situations, then they may choose to defer that income and recognize the revenue over future accounting periods instead. Now, I won't go into the whole revenue recognition feature today. It's a topic in its own right. But if you are interested in how that works and how Synergist automates deferred income and revenue, then we'd be happy to cover that in a separate session. Now, before I move on from the jobs, I think it's worth mentioning how the exchange rates are managed. Now, your standard exchange rates are maintained centrally within, within the system, the back end of the system, which ensures consistency across the agency. But there are occasions when there may be a situation where you want to override the exchange rate for a specific project. Perhaps you've agreed a fixed contractual rate with a client, for example. Now, Synergist allows you to do that. Then, when you raise the invoice, you have another opportunity to amend the exchange rate if required. So that gives finance complete control. It's also worth mentioning that Synergist supports separate exchange rates for sales and purchases. So we recognize that the rates that you buy at don't always match the rates that you sell at. Okay, so we're going to take a step back now from individual projects and look at how this appears across the wider business. Now, like most areas of Synergist, the jobs list is completely configurable. So users can filter this to look at their own jobs, their own clients, their own job types, but they can also choose exactly which columns that they want to see displayed depending on what they're trying to manage. Now, I've started with a pretty traditional operational view. So in my view, I can see things like estimated versus actual time, progress against budget, maybe the value of work completed, what's been quoted, maybe estimated gross net profit. So that gives you an immediate understanding of each project is performing. However, for some agencies working internationally, we can also switch that job list view into a more currency focused view. Now to do that, if I just go across to my view settings, you'll notice that we have some system views, some company views. We've created a number of views for different departments within the agency. I've got my own views. So if I switch to this currency one, so now I switch to this currency one, we're now not just looking at the operational performance, we're seeing the financial impact of working across different currencies. So this list can be displayed in the project's trading currency alongside converted values for your reporting currency, giving your finance teams instant visibility of the value of work underway across multiple markets without having to manually convert everything into Excel. It also means that your operational teams continue working in the currencies that make sense for the clients without your leadership and finance team still receive one consistent reporting across the entire business. Okay, so we've seen how Synergist, have some coffee. We've seen how Synergist allows each project to operate in the appropriate currency whilst automatically handling the complexities of the exchange rate behind the scenes. But of course, capturing the data is only half the story. The real value comes from what that enables you to get from a reporting and management perspective. So whether you're running 2 companies or 20, leadership needs timely, consistent information to make informed decisions. And that's where Synergist reporting really comes into its own. Now I'm going to start with the dashboards. So again, it depends. For a lot of agencies that prefer a more visual way of consuming information, Synergist provides a range of configurable dashboards that present key operational metrics in real time. So here we can quickly understand things like your team profitability or your company profitability or who your top clients are. And that might be by invoiced or by recognized. Maybe you're looking at earnings per head. But we can also switch this to look at things like staff utilization. So chargeable versus non-chargeable, again, across teams, across company. We've touched on capacity. You may be interested as well in more of a sales angle. So in which case, what's our pipeline looking like? But however you do it, it basically gives you an option to look at them in different ways. So these dashboards hopefully provide like an immediate snapshot of what's happening today, which allows you then to spot hopefully issues earlier and make decisions. But when we move to a more formal management reporting, that's where the standard reports become a little bit more useful and add a little bit more value. So unlike the dashboards, these reports can be produced across multi-companies, giving you a consolidated view of the entire group. And the important point is that whilst each operating company may trade in its own local currency, the reports are automatically consolidated into the base currency of the company you're running the reports from. Sounds complicated, but I'll give you an example. If I ran this report, so perhaps I ran a profitability report from the UK company, all the values I'll see are consolidated into pound sterling. If I run the exactly same report from the US company, those same figures will be presented in US dollars. So that gives your finance team a much more consistent view of performance across the entire group without the need for manual currency conversion or spreadsheet manipulation. So whether you're looking at revenue, profitability, utilization, work in progress pipeline, everybody's working from a single version of the truth. Now, finally, for organizations looking for even richer reporting, we have our data analytics tool. Switch back to my dashboard. So this module gives you a much more kind of fully interactive reporting tool with the ability to combine data from multiple sources, but more importantly, multiple companies, and present it in whichever way suits your audience best. And for the sake of this demo, I've created two examples. The first one I've created is this revenue forecast report, and that's across both my UK and US companies. And you'll notice there's significantly more revenue in the UK business. And that's simply because this is our demo environment and the UK company contains far more sample data than the US company does. But the important point isn't the kind of the figures themselves, it's the fact that Synergist is bringing both companies together into a single consolidated view. So whether it's a US company or whether it's a UK company. Second example that I've created, which has now disappeared. Oh, here it is now looking at GP versus target. So in this report, now we're looking at actual GP achieved against whatever you set as your kind of client, your company target, and then also the variance against the target. So again, this gives you an immediate understanding of whether each company or your team or your department is ahead or behind plan, allowing them to focus attention of where it's needed. And as with all data analytics reports, you're not restricted to one way of viewing the data. So you can either present data in a table format or as chart. As you can see in both of mine, you can have a combination of the two. Okay, so over the last 20 minutes or so, we've seen how Synergist can manage multiple companies, supports multi-currency operations, enables cross-company resource planning, and provides real-time reporting across the entire group. Now, if there's one thing I'd like you to take away from today is that growing agency groups shouldn't have to choose between independence and visibility. With Synergist, every company can operate in the way that works best for them, whilst your leadership team gains a single real-time view of the entire business. Now that means less admin, fewer spreadsheets, better informed decisions, and a platform that's designed to scale as your business grows. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar. I hope you found it useful. If it does look like Synergist could work for you or you have any further questions, do let us know and we'll be happy to set up a deeper dive. Also, if you want to look at any of our previous webinars, from the Powers to the Agency Masters to the A Game, then do visit our YouTube channel. But thanks once again for joining me today, and hopefully we'll see you on the next session.